Welcome to Eon Cinema, your destination for endless entertainment and unforgettable movie moments. Discover exciting films, inspiring stories, and cinematic journeys across every genre. Whether you love action, drama, thrillers, or timeless favorites, there's always something waiting for you here. Sit back, enjoy the experience, and let Eon Cinema bring the magic of movies to your screen. In this video, we are taking a closer look at the Chronicles of Narnia, The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe. We'll discuss the storyline, summarize the plot, and explore the film's cast and characters. We'll also cover its production details, box office performance, critical reception, and our personal reaction. So, let's get started. Disney's Chronicles of Narnia franchise had an incredible beginning at the box office, but the next installment struggled significantly. Released in 2005, The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe is a film adaptation of the hugely popular C.S. Lewis novel of the same name. The book is one of the most iconic fantasy novels of the 20th century and the first published entry in the Chronicles of Narnia series, which consists of 7 books. Disney adapted the novel with the intention of creating a major fantasy franchise that could compete with the phenomenal success of the Harry Potter movies. The first film became a huge success and appeared to be a promising start for the planned franchise. However, the series would soon face unexpected difficulties. The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe earned an impressive $745 million worldwide at the box office, according to Box Office Mojo. Although the film had a production budget of around $180 million, its worldwide gross was still highly impressive. The movie successfully established Narnia as a major Disney franchise, and many viewers believed the follow-up would be almost impossible to fail, but that is exactly what happened. By the time the third film, The Voyage of the Dawn Treader, arrived in 2010, much of the audience's interest in the Narnia franchise had disappeared. As a result, 4 of the 7 planned movies were ultimately left unproduced, while The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe was a massive success with its $745 million worldwide gross. Prince Caspian performed far below expectations. Released in 2008, The Chronicles of Narnia, Prince Caspian earned around $419 million worldwide. That figure would normally be considered successful for many films, but it was disappointing compared with the first movie. The sequel made more than $300 million less than its predecessor, while also carrying a production budget of approximately $225 million. Several factors contributed to Prince Caspian underperforming compared with the 2005 film. One of the most obvious was the difference in the overall tone and appeal of the movie. The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe had the magical atmosphere, sense of wonder, and fantasy adventure that audiences expected from a Narnia film. Prince Caspian, however, was considerably darker and more focused on war and conflict, which affected its reception. At around 150 minutes, the sequel was also relatively long. Although The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe was only a few minutes shorter, Prince Caspian often felt longer because of its heavier tone and slower pacing. The film also faced strong competition at the box office. It was released during a crowded period that included major titles such as Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull and Iron Man. At the time, Disney did not yet own Marvel Studios, and Iron Man was not considered one of the biggest superhero characters. Disney may not have viewed Iron Man as a major threat, but the movie became a surprise hit and attracted a huge audience. However, perhaps the biggest problem was that Disney expected the Narnia name alone to guarantee another major success. The first movie had created enormous goodwill, but that goodwill was not strong enough to carry a sequel that audiences found less exciting and less magical. Although Prince Caspian earned more than its production budget, its theatrical performance was not enough to make it a clear financial success once marketing and distribution costs were taken into account. The film reportedly lost around $100 million theatrically, making it a major disappointment despite its substantial worldwide gross. Despite this setback, Disney decided to move forward with a third movie in the franchise. The Voyage of the Dawn Treader arrived in 2010, but Disney made another difficult decision that further affected the series. Instead of maintaining the scale of Prince Caspian, the studio significantly reduced the budget for the third installment to around $140 million, approximately $85 million less than its predecessor. Disney also appeared to invest less heavily in the film, which further weakened the franchise's momentum. From a net profit perspective, however, the reduced production budget helped limit the financial risk. Ultimately, the Narnia franchise never reached the level of success Disney had originally hoped for. What began with a spectacular box office performance gradually lost momentum, leaving the studio's ambitious plans for adapting all 7 books unfinished. However, viewers of the Chronicles of Narnia, The Voyage of the Dawn Treader were ultimately divided, with the film receiving around a 50% critics score on Rotten Tomatoes. If Disney had made another movie in the Chronicles of Narnia franchise, audiences might have been more skeptical. The fourth film, The Magician's Nephew, was announced in 2011, but the project never moved forward. Netflix, which owns the rights to the series, wasted no time developing a new Chronicles of Narnia film franchise. Although many details are still being kept under wraps, it has been confirmed that Barbie director Greta Gerwig has signed on to lead Netflix's new Chronicles of Narnia project. Having a visionary filmmaker at the helm could give the ambitious franchise a fresh direction. Based on what Gerwig has accomplished with Barbie, she clearly understands how to work with an established intellectual property while preserving what makes it unique and updating it for modern audiences. That approach is exactly what the Chronicles of Narnia may need. The franchise has never been particularly well known for its strong female characters, which may have left some female viewers wanting more. With the director of Lady Bird and Little Women taking charge, Netflix's new films could have an opportunity to address that weakness and bring greater depth to its characters. Netflix's upcoming Chronicles of Narnia adaptation is now moving forward, and new details from the production have suggested a major change for the beloved franchise. Greta Gerwig's Narnia is reportedly set to adapt The Magician's Nephew, which serves as a prequel to The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe, originally published in 1955. As always with a reboot of a popular franchise or a new adaptation of a classic novel series, there is plenty of curiosity about how Netflix's Narnia movies will compare with the previous films. Gerwig has already created some distance from the earlier franchise by choosing The Magician's Nephew as the starting point. The previous film series never adapted this story. While some viewers may be less familiar with C.S. Lewis's prequel novel, it contains several important details that directly connect to later Narnia stories. The film is expected to introduce key characters and establish the wider world of Narnia for future installments. That makes the question of how faithfully the adaptation follows the source material especially important. Even small changes to the story or its setting could have major consequences for potential sequels. One of the biggest reported changes concerns the time period. In the novel, The Magician's Nephew is set in 1900, but the upcoming film appears to be shifting the story to the 1950s. Set designs and production photos reportedly support this possibility, along with casting information and details from various outlets. While the exact setting has not been officially confirmed, the available evidence suggests that the film may indeed move the story into a more modern era. This could significantly complicate the franchise's timeline. The stories in the original Narnia books are largely connected to the 1940s and the period surrounding World War II. The Magician's Nephew takes place in 1900, while The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe begins in 1940. Prince Caspian takes place in 1941, and the later stories continue from there. C.S. Lewis wrote The Magician's Nephew as a prequel explaining the origins of Narnia and the history of Professor Diggory Kirk. Because the professor is an adult in The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe, Lewis placed the events of The Magician's Nephew in 1900. If the film adaptation instead moves the story to the 1950s, It could create an entirely new timeline for Netflix's version of the franchise. Future adaptations based on the same novels would then have to adjust their settings accordingly. For example, The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe could potentially be moved into a more contemporary period rather than remaining in the 1940s. Such a change would influence the characters' clothing, technology, surroundings, personalities, and overall outlook. At the same time, the relationships and character dynamics would still need to retain the spirit of Lewis's original stories. Exactly how Gerwig and Netflix plan to handle these changes remains to be seen. Gerwig has remained relatively vague about her long-term plans for the franchise, making it possible that some of the reported details could still change. Nevertheless, the upcoming Chronicles of Narnia project is shaping up to be one of Netflix's most ambitious fantasy productions. There is also considerable excitement surrounding the potential expansion of characters who previously received limited attention in the earlier films. Netflix's adaptation could provide an opportunity to explore the world of Narnia and its characters in greater depth. There have been many questions surrounding Gerwig's upcoming adaptation of C.S. Lewis's iconic fantasy series, particularly regarding how the Netflix films will differ from Disney's earlier trilogy. Netflix announced its plans to develop the franchise in 2018, and details are finally beginning to emerge, including which book will be adapted first. The original Narnia films helped popularize the franchise and its distinctive fantasy imagery. However, after 3 movies, plans to continue the series eventually stalled. Netflix later announced that it had acquired the rights to the Narnia stories, opening the door for a new cinematic universe, following the massive success of Barbie. Greta Gerwig is now set to lead Netflix's new Narnia project, which could eventually expand into multiple films. However, the franchise is already taking an unexpected direction. Instead of adapting the first published book, The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe, Netflix has chosen The Magician's Nephew as the starting point. Although The Magician's Nephew is the 6th book published in the series, it functions as a prequel. The story explores the origins of Narnia, including the creation of the magical world and the beginnings of the wardrobe's connection to it. Because of these connections, the film could serve as an important foundation for Netflix's entire Chronicles of Narnia franchise. The Magician's Nephew centers on a character who had only a minor role in the first Disney movie. The story focuses on Georgie, a young boy from London who lives with his uncle Andrew. Andrew possesses a set of magical rings that allow people to travel between different worlds, and Georgie takes advantage of them. By the end of the book, Georgie brings back a magical apple and plants its seed, which eventually grows into the tree that will later provide the wood for the famous wardrobe. Georgie Kirk is still present in The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe, where he appears as the professor. The main characters in The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe find themselves at the professor's house, where they discover the wardrobe and use it to enter Narnia. Although Georgie is not a major part of the first story, it is exciting that the next film in the series could give him the spotlight in his first Narnia adventure. Among the characters from The Magician's Nephew who return in The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe, Georgie benefits the most from the prequel. While the White Witch already receives plenty of attention in the main story, the professor has very little backstory in The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe. His full history is presented in The Magician's Nephew, where he becomes an important figure in the creation of the wardrobe and the connection between our world and Narnia. This makes it especially important for a future adaptation of The Magician's Nephew to give viewers a satisfying story rather than leaving them waiting for the next Narnia installment. Georgie plays an important role in bringing the characters to Narnia, but his actions also have a major impact on Narnia itself. When Georgie uses the magical rings, he initially travels to another world, where he awakens a powerful being named Jadis. He accidentally brings her into his own world, setting the stage for her eventual role as the White Witch. By the end of the story, Georgie plants the magical apple that helps protect his world from the consequences of what he has unleashed. In this way, the Georgie is directly responsible for awakening the main antagonist of the first Narnia book, releasing the magician's nephew before the lion. The Witch and the Wardrobe could make the two stories feel like an epic two-part saga, creating a unique and compelling chapter in the larger Chronicles of Narnia franchise. The Chronicles of Narnia is certainly a beloved series, with its classic characters brought to life from the popular novels by C.S. Lewis. The stories are incredibly enjoyable, and there is no doubt that The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe is the best-known entry. It is filled with charismatic characters, memorable moments, and an incredible story that feels perfectly suited for a movie adaptation. Thankfully, the 2005 film did not disappoint. It presented a classic battle between good and evil in a whimsical yet adventurous way. The dialogue made the characters easy to connect with and created a wide range of emotions throughout the movie. Mr. and Mrs. Beaver also bring plenty of humor and warmth to the story. Their relationship as an older married couple creates several entertaining moments, making them memorable and likable supporting characters. One particularly funny moment comes from Mr. Beaver's love of food, which Mrs. Beaver understands perfectly. Aslan is presented throughout the movie as a powerful and wise character. He provides guidance and comfort to the young humans while helping them grow and mature. However, there are also moments when his more intimidating side becomes visible. His confrontation with his enemies demonstrates just how much power he truly possesses, creating a moment that makes the audience stop and appreciate his importance. C.S. Lewis created a timeless story that continues to appeal to readers and viewers of all ages. If you have never read the book, it is certainly worth experiencing. And if you feel too old to read a children's novel, try reading it with your children or grandchildren. You may find that you enjoy it even more than they do. Spoiler warning: if you have not read the book or seen the movie, the following section discusses the ending. One aspect of the ending has often bothered me because it can feel as though the story reaches the wrong conclusion. The story presents Aslan as a righteous king who willingly sacrifices himself to satisfy the demands of justice made by Queen Jadis. This clearly reflects the Christian idea of Jesus sacrificing himself on the cross to defeat evil. Lewis does an impressive job presenting this interpretation through the concept of the deep magic. Aslan willingly goes to the stone table as a sacrifice, allowing Jadis to believe that she has finally defeated him and secured her right to rule Narnia. However, she does not understand the existence of a deeper magical one that allows Aslan to return from death and removes any claim that Jadis has over him. The story's themes strongly resemble the Christian account of Jesus' death and resurrection. Aslan's sacrifice, death, and return are central to the story's message about justice, redemption, sacrifice, and the defeat of evil. Lewis himself stated that when he wrote The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe, he was not intentionally creating a direct allegory of Christianity. Nevertheless, regardless of his intentions, the story contains unmistakable Christian symbolism. Aslan clearly represents a Christ-like figure, while the four children can be viewed as representing humanity. Jadis, meanwhile, represents evil and temptation, standing in opposition to Aslan and everything he represents. This symbolism is one of the reasons The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe remains such a memorable and powerful story. Beneath its fantasy adventure is a deeper exploration of sacrifice, courage, faith, redemption, and the ultimate struggle between good and evil. The head of Aslan at the hand of Jadis represent the death of Jesus on the cross. The resurrection of Aslan represent the Christ of Jesus. But maybe that is where the parallels stop and we should not try to make other event in a love story event the Bible. Lewis was not trying to get the story to match the Bible but was simply writing a good story. He liked ending Ito with a battle in which the bad people die. Who does not like a story like this? So maybe Lyson finished his story the way he did because it make a better ending than the one we find in the Bible, but I am not content with that explanation. So maybe it could be argued that battle between the Alan and Sarisa and the Loindishy wardrobe is intended to be displayed the battle that is in the Book of Revelation, but then Thesa does not explain why C.S. Levy wrote the Last Battle, which is a book me reading right now and will write a post on a future date. Ultimately it seemed that no matter how we look at it, the end of Lo the Wish and Thea wardrobe does not fit with his the character. After Jess rises from Thea dead, the record's numerous objection and questions any confusion about what exactly Jesse's did or did not do. Then Jess's ascent into a human, and there is more confusion afterwards. The next time the folders receive power and then Thea go out to continue the battle against their defeated, for many of them suffer and enjoy horrible death. 2,000 years later we are still waiting for Alan's return. Many are still suffering and dying at the end. Han are defeated after seem quite undefeatably everywhere. Say is defeated. Buddha experiences says otherwise. The world seems to be getting worse. It will seem to be increasing. What is the answer? But his solution. What did Jesus have to leave was right when he needed him most? Part of the answer I think is found in another movie, but this time in Star Wars A New Hope. The part where Obiza dies and is resulting that Empire has on. Little do you know that Obi has now become more powerful than he ever. This is not exactly what happened with Jesus, but he did say in the John he said that it was over a advantage of him to go away because only then could he send the Holy Spirit. Jesus could only be in one place at only a time. But the Spirit of God is in all the places with all people at the same time. Frankly, I'm not sure why we did not have bored. But there is another questions for another time. In the end, we have to trust as that he know what he is doing, and as Satan's really so defeated, and our job, our responsibility, our task on his heart to continue the battle that Jesus has already won. The struggle against the principalities and power against rulers of darkness and the spiritual forces of the wickedness. In a very literal sense. We could argue from scripture that Jesus has returned and handed to each one of his churches the body of Christ. We are the incarnation of Jesus in this, so we are the one to enter those who have been held captive by sin. We are the one to go for any evil. We are the one to battle John the god of hell. Maybe just maybe this is what C.S. Lewis mean when he wrote about the return of Elena in the battling Queen latest. If so, this is why in Lucy rode with him. For now, when Jesse is right out battle, he does not ride alone, but ride with all who bear the name of grace. I think me going to read the ending of the Linnea Shiny Wardrobe this way from now on. I guess C. Levi's was not wrong for after all. Maybe the problem is not that Levy's story disagreed with Scapure, but that we have misunderstood Scapure. Maybe Thea ending to the line dish and Thea wardrobe actually just fit with Thea sculpture and we have misreading a scripture all join along. Maybe Theta battle in the book is the battle we are currently waking right now, and Alan is not just but is all who belong to Thea body of Christ. In our job it is our task to go forward and wage or engage those spiritual forces that have enslaved other. We cannot sit back to say or such an evil word. I am just going to sit here on my padded bench at a bus station waiting for the heavenly bus from heaven to come by pick up me and take me away to eternal bliss. No, Jesus is rise from the third, and in the church he is riding forward his powerful glory and the rightness to set the captives free, to proclaim proside to be blind now liberty to those who are oppressed. Let me put it in this way: Jesus is aware of the world, but he worked the thought through his people to bring the reality of the redemption to the world. If you just sit back and wait for the end to come, then does that mean for the world? It means that they lose hope. They suffer, they die. So in the end, I guess Levi's was right after all. But Asen is no longer just Asen. In the end, Alan ride out with Leah and sent on his back and an army of raided captives in the tan. Now they are out of Regina's box of his King of Narnia. $shy wardrobe wings level B totals won't be matched. There's a little to Disney's massive marketing push. We'll be thinking nowadays the Regina's box office king among Theta Oxford Fantasy Order has run its course. He all challenged thesis levies is being nominated as his successor with the Chronicles of Narnia. Do the line Davished wardrobe not nearly as imposing as The Lord of the Rings as mythology drama or literature like series. A 7-Rodlanda book has nevertheless been popular since the Loin first appeared in 1950. Thus coincidentally it also provides the opportunity for the sort of the extravagant computerized effect that create movie attractions releases over rings a level the massive marketing pushing the services offer competently made film that appeal to all demography will be banking money from this one for the end in the fiery future. Unlike the much more demanding and young adult oriented ring cycle levy stems are geared toward children. To many adult they can seem simplistic or somewhat derivative and don't write out of analyzes Christian's a fable or metaphor line functions best as a wizard of oil like a tripna expressions of innocent parentheia brought children's imaginative escape from dreary reality into an Buddha perilous word of strongly personified a god and evil dominated by animal human-like actors and the wish like Hoida similarly ends with Ollie's confronting a decision to return to Dead Delhi rather than to stay in the wondrous land area regarded as hero and royalty. Like Pets and Trilogy the line so presented by the famously family-friendly producer Mark Johnson's along Thea Phillips statue on a scale and clear accent on New Zealand location. What Haida lacks in the complexity distinguish Ida Angles as Yanka escaping one war zone merely to find another siblings better. So son, Edmund and little Dossie are spared out of London during the Blairs by their mother to the camp of a distant country estate inhabited by the professor. During a game of hide-and-seek, Leosie ducks into a large wardrobe only to find herself transported into a fantasy forest where she meets a flan Mr. a man half-goat who expresses wonder at the arrival of a girl he called the daughter of and invite her of his cohort big-eyed snub-nosed and a pleasantly plump. Henley conveys the curiosity that make her an ideal conjurement one is remaining to feel in this new world. It to define to explain that Narnia is ruled by a troubled queen, the white wrist who gave the land an internal winter and has prevented a Christmas from coming for 100 years. Our queen has decreed that any human found in Narnia must be delivered to her. Mr. Jonas lets her go on unlucky second trip through the wardrobe. She is followed by Dinga brother Edmund very good at his skepticism and incident who is promptly founded by the Queen. Pig's central adventure start at the 40 minutes mark as Lucy and the Edmund are joined by the older Patter and sends to around the forest until being taken in by Mr. and Mrs. Favor computer animated creators a regal damn that news of the imminent arrival of the great land and a savior they will need as a discanted Edmund has lived away to see the Queen only to be thrown into a free jail along with the phone-in form of the Interpolar's arrival. The wish dispatch as her flying monkeys air meriting was to intercept them. The film's most apparently animated creature that was featured in or just scary scene that along with some violent battle momentum pushed the foe and perhaps beyond the invisible line between PG and PG-13 a terror try simply put unprepared small fry may get more than they can handle with the interest of the Loin King era as the Enterprise is the end road with a GI that lands the drama a moral purpose and inspire thyroid to a pitch and arguably vimly English gear to advanced level determinism as wisely readly a noble Irish angle as prone as a well-known wizard one side of beating a deep thought his uncanny ability to say and do the right thing extend to real, so that immortal man and began to comprehend when he makes a private tale with a given that intel sacrificing himself for the greater good. This senior stage as an act of the ancient regular that Mel appreciate his another dad imprankable may find should watch as it is for Susan and Lucy who have a complaint on his fateful journey. Pig's credibly tree hangings as much on the visualization outline as on anything else, compared with the imposing Althana looks somewhat less lifelike at first. His expression seemed a bright pose and the waving of his man and ultra hair is not entirely naturalistic. but one soon accept him as his memento carry a deliberate compressor and a reading convey a sitting delight a climatic battle, the scale of which has rather more to do with the Lord of Rings and than with the anything in the less is marked not only by its spectacle but by its unique constituency. Both sides area populated not only by a recognizably member of the animal kingdom but by creatures of unfoundably original combination man-beastina divided by the beautiful and the Queen's minions go tramps of Thea course and then Candless's note leaves the wardrobe over wide open for a sequel as lucky as the professor although there are a few obvious precise shorts and detail had painted backdrop of the film's design element and special and visual effects have mostly impressive, seemingly the only thing he took good or pull off his making Thea character made visible only mostly vendor setting combine offer to production a designer Roger costume designer visual the kids work well together are the Moria upright personalities are the soldier siblings prevent mostly and Popplewell from being as entertaining as our Henley and Keynes as white as a vampire Swinton Lemons or her icy queen with a nearly a wide of an ability Harry Griggs Williams score being helpful of vigor to the enterprise which addition to New Zealand was partially insured in Poland the England and it's to have to trash a film that so many people were hoping would be really good. I counted myself among the group despite the fact that my family story cameo primarily through other lacking adaptations including the cartoon and the BBC version would all actor Rena animal suit. I have never really been a die-hard Narnia film to understand and sympathizes with those who are see a magical kingdom ruled by the Len and written by the indolical White Wish Hassa entrance and the enchanted reader both a young and old for over half a century. That sad the fact that every attempt to film adaptations including this one has failed leads me to believe that perhaps it is one of those stories battled to the printed the failure in his case I believe can be trusted to be the director and his apparent salvage a devotion to the source material judging by the way the Disney marketing department is packaging this as his next Lord of Audi gratingly familiar voice of Luger effect many research rather unique became material to explain it all begun amid the cause of World War. London bombs are failing like rain and Bombersa will describe like ominous blackbird of a war for young children batter and lassie raking in age from their early teen to about 6 years old. Are hastily put on a train headed out of town and is sent to life with a V professor in his dark and fancy mansion. All these happened in the first few minutes with no real regard to who these kids are also possible and why we would care to watch their journey. The whirlwind of it all would probably disorient most in theories as the war is never explained but are rather left as a potentially abstract and arbitrary threatening occurrence coupled with the whisking away of Thessie who were innocent children and explain it why White Flemingly a snake a while probably by be the first thing that come to mind for many sucker kids but they would be wrong as that assumption of that old Professor Rice actually a good eccentric while playing a hide and seek. The youngest girl is Lucia hides in an old wardrobe which turns out to be the getaway to be magical world of Narnia. After a few scenes of her siblings doubling her and traveling back in an effort all four eventually make it a trip. Narnia is a beautiful but cold and a lonely land where we are told is always a winter but never Christmas. All manner of the creatures but real and mythical populate Narnia and all overjoyed at a prophesized arrival of actual flesh and blood human beings. The cinematica problem is indeed are many as no time I spent to develop the children the characters early on and until itself resulting in much greater payoff its fantasy journey. Yes, the kids all wind up in Narnia, but there is never an indication that maybe they went to go somewhere else away from the stasis of existence and never of rainbow or like Skywalker twin suns moment, consequently fulfill no urgency and defeating their prophecy of getting home. After all, alter gooding animal and a creature of Narnia don't seem to terribly tone about 100 years legend of evil and are never in any kind of real hurry to do anything. That's not to say the friendly Mrs. and Mrs. Weary of all the taking animal don't get excited at the prospect of the land's salvation upon the children's precise arrival. But let's just say the intensity level of your joy never goes beyond that of what we would expect from an intellectual English professor one of whom just so happened to be the real-life creator. It is the exploitations of their circular unknown Christians apologist and other among the Americana Christian culture that has been another small fly in the ointment served up to unwitting the congregations by the very publicity how so effectively fat Thea Grace, thus making a massive hit, second as naming or once again being bought or wholesale by people of it. These people likely will not be disappointed with Thea handing of the cations a lawyer as nominations of CGI creatures and the human actor or check out the wakey Eileen. Every auditor who don't see many movies, but I can't imagine anyone being as significantly moved or entertained by this something this crowd will rightfully claim that material deserve as a demand meetings a burn the bridge over the elusive middle American church and market on only the second drum out next to time a studio dangles a film in front of them. I doubt it will be quite so quickly to buy, also gaining as unseen a director Andrew admission previously unknown for his co-erection on Thea significantly more entertaining animated Shrek films reveals here to his flawed sense of pacing that perhaps Thea deliberations of the occurred among Thea multiple directors of the agree movie was sorely lacking here. While I'm sure the investors in the adventure very excited at the motion of an as animated a directing so due to his ability to bring all those wonderful creature to 3D life. This proves to be the yet another example of why fact guys for all eternal purposes, that's how we call him, should know to direct. Granted, this is not really a love misfire on the level of Span, and the ability to create semi-realistic a talking animal does not a director make you, and another brain thinks the animation is not anything all that great in a comparison to what we have seen elsewhere. Sure, the rivers are fun and as well vised by Liam looks properly illegal. But even if a CG animal is 85% impressive, which these are, is that other 15% that make all the difference. Check out the sequences with the bad guy henchman of next wolves. For example, the wolves are sent to their mission by the W, and as they speak accepting the order and leave the area, the kind of just to slick a reality of civil war sliding in the snow making an insect a movement, obviously a real move. Finally they stop and the lead wolf says something. The shift back to a digital wolves is almost with blasted daring. The movie Babe had much better tracking animal effect than this, and it was over 10 years ago. Of course, I'd also used a lot of really great puppet and more real animal utilizing it considerably. I was recently told that Levy's himself supposedly on Zero Daddy the only way in his opinion to properly think brings Narnia to life would be as a high-end animated a feature in his day, meaning traditional cell animation and nothing glass integrations. Real actors along desired a fake animal and creatures would simply to be much of a train-only audience as a willing suspensions of disbelief. In the case of the cell, I think has absolutely essentially right. Unfortunately, with the era of cell animations pronouncers officially theta by the very studio that ultimately usually adoptions again, I doubt we will ever see such a properly realized for anytime soon. If you are unfamiliar with the line, Davish and the Wardrobe, suggest picking up the book before you're taking in this film, as Senator Lord Offering's film experience is you're hoping for. Get out your disc if it's a case allegory you are after. Again, try the book or any member of better crafted a good versus evil chosen one. If you wanted to see an epic battle realized on off screen, try Braveheart or even Novice Sky. In this film's intensity of the final battle does not coincide with the kindly turn of the rest of a story. And when the two armies finally charge into battle against only another, it's almost comedic how long it takes from them to finally collide. Only a size charges, then the other size arges. Close-up of one of kids. Close-up of a bad guy. Close-up of another kid. Close-up of another bad guy, another white shot. They were closer. Close-up of a tricky animal charging. Close-up of a bad guy animal. Close-up of battle leading the charge. You can almost go out for a popcorn and not miss any action. To collide, they do, and the battle does have a few impressive moments. Even if you like most of the film, it does not offer anything stunningly visually. No one knew which would not be that big of a problem except that it should. This film does not completely stink Buddha at its best. It's about as good as the first Harry Potter movie at its worst is unbearably dull white, but any long it is sadly this is a naughty movie that's a lesson wardrobe deserves. We story Shardosa children we are introducing to realms of enchantment and fairies later perhaps seen as school or at camp. We share tall tale as a ghost stories as and will adventure Sada in the strange land. As adult, we'll get to a variety of story forms to entertain, instruct and sometimes even to perform songs for us, and also spiritual people. We want something more from as our stories. Christian Novaeus to put in well, we claim nothing less than a perfect story, and while we chatter it or listen all our lives an idea of gaming jokes and said no novels dreams films to play songs how the world of our days we are satisfied only by one short tale we fail to be true history of it just go to who know us these earrings explain the heightened expression surrounding the release of this new film version of the classic fantasy tale by C.S. Lewis to descend the wardrobe written in 1950. It is the first of the 7-volume series The Chronicle of Narnia which collectively has sold more than 85 million books in 29 languages. Lewis's selection in the Myverse or literature at Oxford and Cambridge became well known as apologist for his radio shows and book Maria Priestley The Problem of Pain the Security Platter. He wrote his fantasy series and also some science fictions to convey his delight in the joy and mystery of the human adventure. The stories are set in the context of an imaginary world where issues of right and wrong, trust and bad real life and that come widely into focus. The Lovish and the Wardrobe Clarice Hosesteady began as a picture in my mind of a fawn carrying an umbrella and parsley in a snowy way. Now thanks to the creative energies of the director Sir Andrew Edmund who wrote the screenplay within Peacock Christopher Marks and Stevens this fantasy tale has been brought to the screen with live action sequences turning visual effect and the latest advances in animation during the Germans' bombing of Finland and during the World War II misses. Sense for Our Children by Train to the Counterside. Peter the oldest is a responsible teenager, so son is the smartest and most practical sibling. Edmund is a joker who is always getting into trouble and he is the youngest with the most active imagination. When she arrived at his country house of the professor they were warned by his official house speaker not to shout, noted to run and never to disturb him. One dry while the children are playing hide and seek. Lucy ducks into a wardrobe filled with 4 coats and steps out the back of it into the magical world of Narnia. Amazed at his turn of events, she wanders through this beautiful winter wonderland. At post she meets her Thomas a kind-hearted who is still to meet a daughter of E. In his humble care he tell his white-isle visitor that the white person is Narnia and make I'd always venture and never Christmas. Ida has been this way for 100 years and according to prophecy will only change when our human 2 daughter of Eve and 2 sons of Adam come to replace her. To our inhabitant of the kingdom have been warned that no protected human being is sent to treason. Mr. Decided to disobey the law and the help of Lucio returned to her own world. Like in the professor's house, Lucio is dismayed due to discovery particularly. No time has passed since he has been gone and worse her siblings don't believe her story, but later Edmund also find a way into Narnia. He falls under the spell of the white witch who offers to make him a king he delivers his brother and his sister to her place. What attempt meant and the most of the promises that he can eat all the Turkish delight treats he want. He will learn later that he gives all the animal and magical creature under her control because he has her power to join her opponent into a stone. Back from his adventure in Narnia, Edmund betrays Luke by denying that it exists. Eventually, all the children go through the wardrobia into Narnia and Edmund snake off to seek out a white fish who sends out a PO for the revenue was to kill his brother and his sister. They have met up with Mr. and Mrs. Beverley. Vincent and John Woe are escorting them to the camp of Anna by land. This a great and loving line. Along the way they meet for their Christmas who gave them a special tool to use on her admission which explained it to them. There are quite a number of impressive things about the lines Thea wish in the wardrobe. We single out a very fine performances by George Henley as young Lukey, who is the heart and soul of the story, with her curiosity and a tender feeling. Her interaction with her friend Mr. Tennyson the leader as area especially appealing. Delia Swinton does a remarkable job in not making the white wish into a door. She is credible and not a body job. The voice of Len Nashina gives a center and calm respect to Lanta and the Cindy in Narnia short in New Zealand and Republic in The Beautiful, and the moves along nicely, closing and following the book and filling it out to some with addition of 2 action sequences during this spring, drawing nigh, but then the whole tone of the story is shaped in the preparation for the world war between Army and the White Vision. The legends what the book covers in the top pages becomes a long battle sequences. The filmmakers fall into the same excess that they saw in the Lord of Rings trilogy. Many people have interpreted The Law in the Wardrobe as a Christian's allegory in the life via that expression of Joshua himself advised his fan to approach the Chronicle of Narnia as multi-world stories with many meaning. One of those meaning is the transformative power of forgiveness. If you look stories primarily about the 4 children they know, we see that dramatic line is what happened to Adamson, his election by Thea wish due to his weakness, his bet of his sibling, his suffering as he discovers the error of his choice, his rescue, his repentance, and he is taking his consolation with his family. In Thea book, we see Edmund chase and find to personally apologize to Peterson and Lucy. In the movie we see Edmund talking with Alan and hear Alan Jenny other that he need not talk about the past anymore. Edmund never asked for forgiveness, Acina does everything for him. A serious damagement of the forgiveness theme. These bring us to the questions of why is learning the story. Many of our conservative Christians' brother and his sisters are embarrassing him as a Grier who Jones fall for Adam with a bloody sacrifice and then rises again to defeat the fight fist, but look closely at his wife, his sword cleaner fab blood James to put away his swassa and send to be double sent to gentle at Hiracornian as a queen of Narnia to send an arrow through the heart of the white tail which is led a driver when hustlings live upon the white fish which and kills Hera argument. Many of Christ it is same for the Christians community to lay to rest the image of war as the only way to battle the principalities and power describe those who will do evil things in our world. Yes, we all need to be racist, waste anything that destroys us life. What the essential way to do is according to the Crosswell and the life of Giles is by becoming non-violent warriors for praise and justice. Let's hope that someday soon imaginative filmmaker give a story where go to IC and gas do not kill evil J but transform it to the friends and allies noted would be true to spirit and message of Jesus like this. DVD special feature included a commentary by director Andrea, production a designer Sturford. The original book series The Chronicle of Narnia written by C.S. Lewis in 1950 is an enduring the classic for a reason. However, some of the older themes and darker element make it difficult to adapt to this. Key Growing is set to direct the first 2 movies in the upcoming rebrations for Netflix's. The first film's iterations from Disney ran into the thematic problem in the early 2000s while Lays kept his bloated development consistent and adhere to the rules created by Narnia. This does not mean the average choices will connect with the modern audiences. It's easy to question why this was in Narnia the book, but much of his connect to the Christian's influences that previously in Narnia book Aeson is characterized as a Jew's Crispin at the end of the last battle that determines that the land of Narnia is flawed and need to face a judgment. He created new Narnia for the creature and human to be journeyed to after being judged. This connected the new Narnia being considered human and is a metaphor for the character including it that prevents drawing and ascending to a human. One of the worst part of his ending to the fact that Susan Preventessa is excluded from the new Narnia and essentially become a training. In the book Levies explain this as has become a concern where Firewalls thinks that Hayes is out of being part of Narnia unlike the other children who has also become adult but are allowed to introduce true Narnia. Unfortunately, Now this can easily be interpreted as a seeks up back in your book and then demonstrates some of the major problem that Georgie and the negative face is eventually revealed at the end of the last battle, that not only gone to the true Narnia but they have also died in a train accident on Earth. While this is an intense ending, it is not surprising for reader who have been with Narnia since the beginning. Levis has never been afraid to put the character through their paces and making a definitive comment and moral judgment about him. Levis has never been afraid to put his character through their paces and make definitive comment and moral judgment about him. Additionally, since the Narnia novels are so in the conversation virus kid could only end with destruction of the false Narnia and the creation of human. The Chronicle of Narnia has many created remission or fast stories like Edwin is the Lion, the Wish and the Wardrobe. In a sense, the Pences and the other worldly Narnia characters journeying to the new Narnia is the ultimate redemption arc. Even idling both a more serious religious element combined with the expism of the early book in the series make it easy to understand why Levis would choose to end his book this way. Bringing the Pravinas back and making this story come full circle was fitting. After spending so many years with the Pravinas and watching them grow up, it's difficult to witness them dying to winter human. They are still just young adult when they enter the new Narnia. Plenty of children's fantasy movies grapples with the darker theme and that ending the new Narnia movies with all the main characters passing away. For some audiences, the Chronicle of Narnia adaptations does not necessarily need a happy ending, but telling films is of utmost importance. Nerfly's upcoming reach of The Chronicles of Narnia is on its way, being led by one of the most successful and versatile director coming of here a highly successful Barbie film. However, your most exciting part of these adaptations is the return of one of the greatest villain in fantasy history. Long before the world was introduced with a morally ambitious Queen of Game of Thrones or House of the Dragon or terrified a generation with Jisa Whitefish. The Whitefish was a villain defended nor by a fairy power displays or a screaming monologue but by a quiet crew that have terrifyingly adult in a story meant for children thanks to Tilda's unforgettable performance in the 2005 film. Jiz remains one of the genre's most psychologically feeling antagonist benchmark for how to play evil with allegiance as a streaming's prepared to relaunch the film success of the endeavor that's less on the CJ linear and more man who claim to rule him. Georgie stand apart from typical fantasy villain because she does not rely on the traditional villain standard which makes them look scary and dreadful. Instead the White Witch drives an politics look and voice and manipulation of fairy disembodied drive a song and a melodramatic cackle of a Disney in an era where every pop culture a villain that's a sympathetic for explaining how society broke them. Georgie stand because she never has won. She was simply born to break everything else. According to C.S. Levy's original text and a deep lord of Narnia, Jedis is not even a human. She descended from Legion and a lineage that makes her physically and magically superior to the sons of Adam Giant. Her terrifying nature was established long before she oversaw an arena. Originally the Queen of John, a giant universe under her blood-red sun, Tiza ended a civil war and gave her own sister not by winning but by speaking the adorable word a piece of forbidden magic that uninhalated every living thing in her universe except herself. She later boasted I was the only thing living beneath the sun. This is the definition of a narcissist who would let her rule a graveyard and share a kingdom. These contexts explain why her arrival in arena is so chilling. She did not freeze the land because she was giving. She froze it because she was bored and waiting. After stealing a silver apple from the Garden of White to gain Joyous immortality, she spent 900 years banished to the wild land of the node rebelled by magical geometry of production. During those centuries of isolation, she did not reflect. She evolved. She became an expert in dark magic, developing the event that could patry victim into living a stone status. A fat for worse than a minute. For 100 years winter is the ultimate expression of his control. If she cannot be loved, she ensures that nothing else can grow. In short, her survival motto was if I cannot have it, and no one else can. Hence, her venture is the ultimate expression of this control. If she cannot be loved, she ensures that nothing else can live. The genius of hero villain lies in her. She translates Thea's cosmic power into psychological warfare. Nowhere is it more evident that in her interaction with Admiral Princessa when she wins him over with Thea Turkish delight identifying his insecurities as a middle child. She offers him a projection betrayer of family and they will treat you like the adult you desperately want to be. It is a terrifying major form of manipulations inserted into a children's story, proving that her greatest power is not her magic but her ability to use someone's weakness, engage them for her own selfish mean, and doing that very softly. When directors Andrew Adamson's adoptee to the line Dish and Wardrobe in 2005, he and Tilda Swinton consciously avoided a cackling trope that had dominated children's media from decades. Thea instead opted for a figure who from the outside looked real but from inside. Swinton famously conceptualized Thea character not as a fanatical creature but as something beyond. She looks like the utmost white supremacist, which is what she is. Swanna once to describing the characters comparing Hera to Nazi. This transformed character from a fairy tale will end into a modern nightmare. Swinton Sr. lived in her physical and vocal delivery rather than walking. She seemed to glide across snow rather than shooting the whispered in the iconic entrance in the sound design of Dropout, creating a vacuum of silence that sucked the life out of the forest. So's voice was recorded with glow mic technique to capture every brightly intimate flexion, making it sound like she was speaking directly into audience's brain. Visually, the lighting team employed a specific strategy, initially lighting her with a soft beauty light to make her appear immaterial to inmate before shifting the shadows into her eyes socket to reveal the skull beneath the skin as the conversation turned dark. A lot of her villainy comes from the visual storytelling, and as the costume design played a huge part in creating that atmosphere. Jigen was constructed using a complex ice crackle technique, layering flatted wool silky oils to mimic the organic texture of glacial ice, spiky and imposing physically, manifesting absolute control of the 100 years winter as Slumjaloini approaches and as no male her crown shrinks, her dress becomes heavy and slush-like, and she transitioned from an atrial gods into a despaired feral various wearing man of golden fur. Swinton played hay degradation perfectly, alighting the Craig in her composure show just enough to reveal the panning underneath. Performances at a stony table where she plunges the knife into Elen is not a moment of triumph, is a moment of grim. She proves that a villain does not need to be the loud or a dramatic to be matic. They just need to be the absolutely terrifying sin. Grimm's adaptation has a unique opportunity to repent Jerry's in ways of previous films could not. Reports indicate that Gary is starting with The Magician and a Fury Pell book that tells Jerry's original story not as the Queen of Anarina but as Empress of John. This is a game changer. It allowed a reboot to show the fans Jerry's before the IS, revealing her as a despair warlike Chan fighting a civil war against Shira's own sister with very few detail about the plot known. It is too early to say whether the reward will be based solely on Jad's life and events surrounding Ida, but it all provides Jing with one of the most terrifying concepts in fantasy history. The deplorable word in the books that is revealed that she ended the war in John not by winning but by speaking a single magic word that he hated every living thing in a universe except for herself. Thea transforms her from a static fantasy villain into a figure of unimaginably set. Imagine of a 1950 setting for Thea London sequences such as Gwingfam. Thea's destructive power as a metaphor for Thea Cold War and nuclear anxiety. In Thea's context, the deplorable word can be used in the real world to threaten Jaiza become the person who drives David. Furthermore, the reboot can explore the tragedy of her immortality. After fleeing Char from the garden, a view to gain eternal life, but as he warning at the gears for us we are still the fruit find their hearts a desire and find despair Jay's Gaza immortality, but she loses the ability to enjoy it. The fruit becomes in her body and her internal life becomes a hollow joyless existence driven only by the hunger of power. This adds a layer of tragic complexity to her character that a Tilda Venton version hinted at but never explicitly showed. With the casting of Thea Emma Mackay as a White Witch and Thea reboot, we might see her as a younger figure but arrogant, passionate and physically imposing, which contrast with the gold lens of the latter year. Fans are hoping the reboot captured Thea's origin, the rise and a recent Furious queen who burned a word to save her throne only to freeze another Onia because he forget how to feel anything else. Almost 2 decades since Ben Barza first debuted the character of Princess Caspian in the live-action The Chronicles of Narnia films, he is throwing his why behind a fantasy series for a new generation. The Chronicle of Narnia, The Wish and Wardrobe premiered in 2005, and Barney joined the franchise in the thriller sequel that followed in 2008. Axel Levy's fantasy series never reached full completion in film form, but that might change. No greater serving Isa behind the wheel. The Westworld actor spoke to Variety about his support for the new venture with classic literature. There is no end to the ways that can be adopted as long as it is being fresh and speaking to a new generation. I think that those seed stories have this one. Some fantasy really allows you to tell a beautifully allegorical stories about a hope and goodness and fate. I think that I would be really interesting to see here a take on that. I am thrilled that Narnia is getting retold. Serving is reportedly adopting The Magician's Nephew, which incidentally does not follow the part that was laid out in the film before. That book is technically the 6th in the series, but it's even take place before the story. Nephew is a prequel and has already trapped Daniel Craig, Miranda Emma Mackey for significant role for Bernie S. He's also looked ahead. Ben Barnes has a reputation for playing lesser than heroic characters for the past decade, but in his newest project, as a returning to form, the Punisher actor stars in the Stephen King adaptations, at the Institute, which is premiering on Plus based on King's novel of the same name. It follows the enormous facility where children with a special ability are studied. When he was in my early 20s, I was involved in telling enthusiast stories for the next generation. So to get back to playing a man with a relevant gas on his moral compass who is fighting to stand up for what's right, it was something that I was really interested in since his early years. Also portrayed many villains from Dina and the Punisher to the Drink Darkling and as a Shadow and Bone. Fans can find a reprieve from the type of air in his new television series set to premiere on July 13th. A Gauging Chronicles of Narnia is still in development, but a viewer can watch breakout performances in the original film by streaming the original franchise on Disney+. The past month I watched the BBC version of The Lone Dish Wardrobe for the first time. I had seen all the other BBC Narnia's movie, but I finally got around to watching the first one, Leia Lost. So, here is my review. First, they would like to make allowances for the lower level of technology these people had to work with, who does not? But for the 1980s even, I think this was totally corny, and animal costumes were not also realistic as it could have been. The acting Barbara has overdone and awkward. The animated cases were both stupid and unnecessarily the battle. Oh boy, that did not look like they were fighting, and the music it did not fit, and the blah. Okay. Noah probably a common swiper among Narnia Arena's fans. So now, what aspect of the BBC were admirable? What did they get right that other versions should pay attention to? There was a lot of things that did stand out to me. Actually, here is a few of them. The White Witch's castle was made for a book with a very creepy interior. Not a very big one, and this does not run the obvious risk of melting. Slower repairs. There is more time to meet the characters. I may not have killed all of them. And enjoy the atmosphere of the world. For the most part, it's pretty enjoyable, especially because it's more real stuff. There is just no need for CJ backdrop and excessive use of a studio set. The real world has a beauty need to have. It's by Narnia. Let it represent it. There are just a few on my list. I'm hoping to further discuss this later. It's been a while since I watched the adaptations, but I remember not liking the casting of better, or maybe there was a problem with the writing. He was always resisting Adam for being a brat, which I theoretically like. It definitely makes sense for the characters. But the way it played out, it made Butter come across as really self-righteous compared to the other kids. I found it hard to like him when they play hide and seek. He says he has to because he is the oldest, and he says so. I know some people are throwing up their hands at me think that about the BBC series when the Vulgans media adaptations of Peter made him way more full of himself and hard to like, but I can't think of other things to say both good and bad about Narina's adaptation, so there's not a lot about BBC does stand out me, so I focus on what I can. I kind of wish there was a transcript out online for me to write, then I could give more on the adaptations without having to actually watch the things. There was one thing that I liked about the production that has not been mentioned here before, was the location of filming in Wales and other parts of Britain. I think Nina was much like Materials in England. The outdoor locations made his setting feel more like Britain, where much of it was actually filmed, and although they did not have much money, I think the part of it worked. After actors, I loved Tom Baker's as Andy Silverchair. In fact, I think he was about as good as he was as Doctor Who. It does not really matter that much to me if some people believe this series was corny. Drive Spring. The 4 children were not professional and performed as well as most children would. The animal costumes probably could have been better, but maybe the people that made them thought they were making the best ones possible. If you visit the Lamppost listener broadcast, you will find generally a positive view of the old BBC series. We have for 30 years in the era of the cinematic blockbuster. It began with the massive launch of New York in 1975 and has encompassed for enormous areas that have provided their audiences with eye-popping special effects, uplifting the mismatch of legendary religion and pop culture homage, and the prospect of more to follow in a year's time. This series' star was Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter and Nardini, The Wish in the Wardrobe, the first episode in the Chronicles of Narnia area known as the franchise, a term borrowed by the brandily commercialized Commodores, and only a stain of hotels and fast food joins the seed around the world bearing identical logos. We also live in an age where everyone is immediately informed of the financial success or otherwise of all new films. Will he live today? Oscar Wilde would describe the movie as a man who naughty weekly gross of everything, any value of nothing. The big question is, will C.S. Narnia book David as cinematic form over the next 70 years perhaps, but in 50 years' time will today's pretends be being a decision for the advocacy clearing and wardrobing of the Professor House or the White Wish coach, the way an earlier generation wanted ruby slippers on Kenny's rosy sludge like Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter films. The lion shiny wardrobe is a very English affair aimed at young children who I'm sure will love it. Asprusky directed for most of the while with no grade in visually by Andrew Adamson, a filmmaker previously noted for his work in animation, most notably the Shri movies, drawing on what was Fighter Books' original reader the idea experiences of the Second World War. The film centers on 4 middle-class children so son enter who are near teenagers, Edmund who are so young, Grandpa and Lucy who is around 8 after in recreation of the Lion Blades. Thea revocated to a large rambling country housey home of the remote elderly Professor Wong might be either C.S. Levi's or God, and run by a stern housekeeper. Artisan outsider, more sensitive, vulnerable and self-centered than the others. He risked his life during the to save a picture of his father absent on active service as within his name's dash from manipulative brother in King Lear in the most open to imaginative experiences, and it's she who enter the magical alternative word of Narina. 1 minute the kids area playing hide and seek to disrupt or what jam hit journey, the next minute's Lucky was walked into an arena and through the mysterious wardrobe in the snow-covered land. It is a real venture due to the total train why she ruled into her secret police when originally conceived by Levi's and Narina must have seemed like Nate's eyes occupied France. that children are drawn into the conflict and arena as part of an ancient pro-city. They are the only human being involved in a civil war between the Wish, the incarnation of evil, and the Laius forces of good led by a large fierce Lloyd. Her adherents are vicious talking informed mutant hissy followers include F and Beaver. Thea childrens are initially divided in Thea Way, citizen of most occupied century SR, while his sibling Senna becomes a collaborator Stia to offer of endless advantages out of. We must remember rationing in Britain did not end until February 1953. The word Esplan is a Turkish Warlina books Levi's due on his immense knowledge of medieval literature, but Isalevi's commitment as a Christian apologist that has proved to be the most problematic sources. Surprisingly in Thea 1 that Junior Tolkien, who is largely responsible for his friend's conversation, if found objectionable. The influences is to be found in several ways. One of these, both serious and joker, arises when first a suffering in century comes to Nirina, calated by the appearance of Force to Christmas. The presents he gives Thea 4 children are suitable for White time, since Soldier Adam right out of Thea Black's journal is my sword and shield for a pet acquire for a rose for Susan Dagry for a little, but he also gives Lucy a potion for reviving the near lead and isolate us to Alin the lion speaking in a hillside. Dear voice of Lemnana is crazy, the nightmare who lays down his life to save humanity following his humiliations, and that he is very specifically resurrected with Susan and Adusi his attendants like the tumors. And on the other hand, Iceland is very much the British line emblem of nations and empire, king of the jungle, the spirit of the unification. The children will not however have the films after his low metric badly thinking of us, and the greatest impressions by his likely to have been made by the witch by White Wiz. Her face was white, not merely pally. Life is red but white like snow or paper icing sugar, except for her very rada mood. It was a beautiful face in the other respect, but proud and cold and stunned. He might have been describing the image child Ona who was born to play his role. He is known as an reliable an impression of a fictional character, as W.C. Field Betrajoke or viewers claim call it. I know this movie was released over Weibo back in 2005 and many of you have probably seen it already, but it is only of my all-time favorite and I will gladly watch it a million times as you would never seen it for before I actually begin to review this movie. I should tell you that you really don't need a review on this film to know that it will certainly be enjoyable. However, if that is not much assurance to you, let me give you my full take on the film. The Chronicle of Narnia, the Disc and Wardrobe is a film based on the series written out. At the beginning, once the siblings learn that he will accept Tita to fulfill the fie, they immediately became to refuse. My will given no a choice but to add the youngest of the two brothers want to divide, which Opana being recalled by her dark magic. To some the plot may sound like a cheesy children's tale. However, if you rid yourself of that misconception and watch the movie, you will find that is one of the most breathtaking and interesting movies of all time. The story is based on Christianity and therefore it teaches many lessons. The true action of the character. The acting is really well done. Each character has a personality and you'll be able to understand them quite well. While watching this film, it is very easy to become attention in an air raid. Mrs. Pamis decided to send over 4 children away for his safety. Little Yossi, her sister Susan and her brothers Peter and Edmund are put on a train and brought to their new home with Professor K. Soon after they arrived, his siblings became dreadfully bored in a professor's large but uninhabited house. This leaves them despite the warning and the prohibitions of his strict housekeeper and Mrs. Mister to pass them playing hide and seek. During the game, youngest child Lucy discovers a mysterious wardrobe that lead to a wonderfully magical world. One by one, Edwin, Pet and Suzanne also find their way into the magical world and become swept up in a world of adventure and a nice struggle of wood. The siblings encounter friends, but their son enemies must face tricky situation and prove their endurance alongside the mighty lions learn in the battle Lango YW. The siblings not only grow closer but also come to accept the important role they play in this war. The good news first, children are likely to enjoy the film. The 4 main actors Toa girls to boys ranging from every younger to teenagers offer identity of opportunities for a young adult to identify with and will therefore probably appeal more to kids in adulthood than to adult. Although some scene as a particularly during battle sequences might be a bit too frightening for very young, our alter film is appropriate for children and refers from excessive brutality. There is no need to worry about odd sentence or anything of that sort in this name. The name Disney is attached to Narnia really does mean a children's cinema, the children's film, so does not have to be an interesting of older viewer, and in fact one capture and a fascinating immediate Harry Potter of spirit away. The Narnia does not quite achieve this. The biggest Disney production of all time. Quote from the press kit is unlikely to impress much from an adult's perspective, via which is 140 minutes runtime feel decidedly long and sluggish. This ICU largely to be figures and characters who come across as somewhat superficial and whose face hardly inspire much concern or interest. The little Lucia, thanks to her big round eyes and chubby cheeks, is at least quite cute and earned the bite of a sympathy bonus. But the kiting spider is a pleasant and a Susan maid with her preachel sing Isa generally annoying. Ad group is a proper kid borrowing from Michael's who first to second gen turns into a wimp. The white witch stand out only through her dreadful wardrobe. Costume designer Isa has certainly delivered more appealing work before, and while the various sketches are well crafted, chucking animals when real and drawn of otherwise the animated family play feel disconnecting to me. It's not just the character but also the whole narrative that lacks a certain spice. Something special to grip you and hold your attention. It will be interesting to know how much the film adaptations differs from the book by Sally Weiss. Perhaps it was cured made in adopting the story that many fanina remained hidden. What kind of word it is said? By what rules does it function? How did the word wish come to power? Where does he prophesy originate? The film in any case only half opens the portal to a magical world of Narnia. Director Andrew Adamson would deliver excellent work with his animated adventure Shrek and Shadow disappointed with the Chronicles of Narnia Dio and dish and wardrobe. The much invoked Albert not truly convincing and certainly an unfavorable to the film, a parallel to the Lord of Rings trilogy. Isa really misplaced when it comes to an arena. Neither the story nor the execution despite the involvement of Richard. After 25 years. One of the favorite books from my childhood Isa finally on a big screen, thanks to Walt Disney Pictures and Walter Media. The Lion Dish and Wardrobe. The first Narnia Chronicles of Narnia series by C.S. Lewis arrived, a movie created December 2005. The Lion and the Wardrobe tells the story of for displays London children Putta, Susan and Lucy, who are sent to the country to avoid the devastation in London from World War II. They are taken to the countryside home of an electrical professor whose household's mania mysterious. One afternoon during a game of hide-and-seek their children stumble upon a wardrobe which leads to a mythical land called Narnia. When this project was first announced, I was ecstatic. Being a long-term fan of the series, I could not wait to see his in the big screen. The movie was extremely entertaining and just the perfect of the holiday season. However, my hopes were not all fully realized. In many ways, The Lion Wish and His Wardrobe is a great movie. Tilda Swinton says to her overtop portrayals of the witch, "She is exactly what I have imagined for all these years." The actors and actresses picked up to portray the falsy children are also wonderfully cast, and his script is very faithful to the original novel. Narnia was also not Narnia without its flaws. In part, some of these flaws could not have been easy to support if movies such as The Lord of the Rings never made it to big screen. The director's Adamson should honestly stick to animated features, such that he was known for Shrek, and shows that this is the first time the director has directed real actors just for an animated movie. The main problem that he had with this film was the special effect. Yes, you did read this certain sentence right. The special effect were extremely sarcastic. Special effect have demons potentially since their early days of Terminator 2 and Jurassic Park, but these film face life of today's standard. Every scene that had a computer animated a character or an actor actress is on a green or blue background was easily spotted. I was a little shocked when I saw this, and part of the special effect of John for Narina's one better, the special effect house created by Peter Jackson's who created a lot of the drawings there. Yes, it is not a fact that the technology doesn't exist, that the creators really did not fully utilize the technology. All in all, I will chalk up the line the wardrobe as an experiment for Disney and the Fantasy Journal after they pass over our own Harry Potter and Lord of Rings. Kids will definitely look past the special effect problem and enjoy this movie, and if you can do that you definitely will as well. For me, there are always 6 more book to go on special effect will improve on next few year. I love the movies from the mid. I try to capitalize on effects of the Lord of the Rings and the Harry Potter. The Chronicles of Narnia series is probably my favorite. Part of that I know comes from the fact that I liked the book long before the movie as it ever came out, but they really would maintain that they are a good example of fan adaptations of the novels into film that manage to capture the spirit and the feelings of the book without falling a prey to the pitfalls and many suck adaptations. Yet it is another review where I use a film in questions as a twin winner to a sat over of your point about filmmaking that I actually want to make. Adopting anything into a SMA is difficult for a number of reasons, most of which boil down to the fundamental differences between some and every other medium. Books often get hit with his hardest of all. It's slightly to do with size and pacing. A book can be thousands of words long and take several hours to read through. The pacing of a book in is very different because it has to hold the reader's attention for all through the hour. It might achieve this with a constant blogger, affection-based scene, a physical action, or some other part of the attention-keeping method such as sex scene, big argument, dramatic, but most a book a combination of scene, setting, a description and characters development using the extra pages and word count to be able to really dive into how a characters are feeling about things, or also describe in detail how pretty dead a landscape books. Chronicles of Narnia's goes mostly with the landscape option. There's also heavy motive war dog. These was after post-war and children's appointed lush description of faulty food until still could not eat because of rationing. The characters of the book area actually surprising spare. None of them go through a significant amount of emotional turmoil about finding themselves in a fantasy land. This planet to fight an evil witch, in fact. After a short conversation, they come completely around to the idea. P does not waver in this determination to be the upstanding English schoolboy and become the High King. The aside from Edward Donwhy of characters drama from jump. Part of this is of course the time C.S. was writing it when it was a fairy stand and a hope for upstanding English school was suggested to whatever situation they found themselves in, and be good example of Christian's ratio and character. The problem is that nowadays we think that'll make for a supremely boring character. This is one of my many examples of where the Chronicles of Narnia film series proved to be the good adaptations. They turn the children's into real people who are scared of being trapped in fantasy land. Protest said he can get involved in a war. Pat is clearly terrified when he wants to fight a wolf instead of bravery charging into battle. Given how movies adopting books are trying to cut out character decisions, opening ISO here to make the character into caricatures of book on our time looking at you grown welly. It's refreshing for Chronicles of Narnia to make the child heroes more relatable, even if sometimes it falls on a little because the child actor will not quite up to the challenge of conveying that very complex emotional weight they were being asked to. Film itself gives the story a far more real-time board than the book. The second things that in Narnia gets it right in the changing up the pacing of the movie. C.S. Leto handed word to a describe and page Chronicle of Narnia as a film can convey a single camera shot, meaning that the read for the all-edited description is reduced since so much of the book is taken up in the describing the fantasy land. This does impact on the pacing the way that the film's versions compensate is what shuffle things around a little. Everyone's getting into the wardrobe is dealt with nice and promptly at the beginning of the movie, sparing only enough time to establish the basic character traits of the heroess. A battery wants her to be in the charge, but is clearly also a scared little boy. So son is mortally but as with child trying to fill the role because he feels the perceived to. Edmund is the religious and Loss is idealistic and the dreamer. The film does not need more than that, so it does not give us more than that, knowing that the point of story about the children's going to a magical land is to get them to that magical land. It also adds a few smaller actions that pieces such as when the children's are escaping from the secret police. This is also a good change of pace as in book. The entire scene was just the child drawing through snow and looking at a bleak landscape. This began to change once more what worked in the books as a tense and exciting escape would have simply looked like a whole lot of working and it being adapted note for a note showing the actual battle at the end also gives the film an aesthetic note as opposed to it all being described after the effect in the book. Adaptations of books often get criticized for changing the source material. But sometimes it is necessarily and as long as it's ended in a way that it still captures the original feeling then I am all of it. Chronicles of Narnia know that it is an exciting fantasy adventure and if you lands into that the battle our people expect the gorgeous landscape the plucky get well differentiate real heroes it's all here and it's been well translated to be Narnia the first Chronicles of Learning of Seam still hold up exceptionally as well as a good or adaptations of a children's novel to a family-friendly adventure film it might not be a quite of J with be a Harry Potter adaptations but is a far cry from this Mercy Jackson or far rubbish. The four parents are child span and a joint and lucky I sent from and the bling Madonna to stay with the century Professor Keynes his large contention, while Bling has since discovers a wardrobe and enters pass and endures passing through the other side to find himself in a snowbound forest. She miss Mr. who invited her friend to explain that she is in the land of Narnia. However, when Lucy returns through the closes and finds that no time has passed that a ridicule encounters the White Witch who rules the land and refuses to allow Christmas to come. The White Wisdom's adamant with the promise of Turkish delight if he will bring the others a troth through the wardrobe fleeing after the no cricket ball through a window. The four children are hide in the wardrobe and discover Narnia. Once they are here the White Witch seek to kill them in order to prevent her property that says the coming of four kings and queen will expel her and may return to the wish seeking his reward only to be Demetia her prisoner. The other place they trust in the inviting loam the Lord of the Forest who has no return to marshal the cages of the land to stand up and force of the White Witch. It is safe to say that if there had not been a success for Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings trilogy, The Lord of the Rings or Fellowship of the Ring 2001, The Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers and Return of the King near the Lion the Wish and the Wardrobe. The Lion Wish and the Wardrobe looks exactly like Studio and they rush around to find other properties to exploit. Then he found Boom High Fantasy had rated on the Caslav book as eminently fameable. Not to mention that his 7-book Narnia says has much potential to span up an ongoing franchise. The association also extend the films of Lord of Rings and the Davis and the Wardrobe which both draw or seek to draw upon a New Zealand connection. A lot of readings Jackson put New Zealand on a map in terms of major filmmaking and enjoyed extraordinary success. The people behind the Lone Dish Wardrobe clearly also sought to exploit his connection. The director chosen for the Lone Dish Wardrobe was Andrew Adamson. Andrew Adamson is a New Zealander who began in the film industry in the visual effect department at a Pacific Datum Ages working on Joel 2 Batman. He quoted this among others before graduating to care directors of a DreamWorks animated film Track 2001 and the sequel Shrek 2004. Andrew Adamson's brought into reproduction line and Universal aligned film clearly in allowing him to do so. Disney seemed to think they could exploit the whatever associations at a New Zealand had in the public mind with The Lord of the Rings and for Jackson. Even further than that, Adamson managed to employ a number of people from Jackson's name, most notably The Oscar-winning effect and creature design Willa research Stellar and his workshop Hema, while it was the triumph of the Lord of the Rings that allowed Line and Wardrobe to get off the ground. The film that almost certainly influenced at least when it came to be marketing was the massive success of Mel Gibson. Gibson made The Passion of it recently as a work of person's fate. Again, predictions the film become a runaway sensation, where the success of Education of Decrease clearly identified was that a criticism made up a substantial percentage of demos in Americana heartland. The operation of the Greatest Assembly opened up a new market as far as Hollywood was concerned and created the notion of marketing campaign that stepped around the visual roads of internet and theatrical and pace and even preview the film in charge to Christian's orders. It was his marketing strategy that propelled his utterly medical to become a box fit. This strategy has also been employed when it comes to the line Davish and Thea wardrobe. Here Disney employed a dual-level marketing surgery where while devising another entirely strategy that promoted, previewed and distributed material in search across the world, playing up the Christian allegory aspect of the story in this evil marketing stream is seemingly independent of each other was so successful that you could not find a single piece of the mainstream promotional bodyline and wish any wardrobe that is anyway told you about the Christian's allegory aspect, or even C.S. Levy's backgrounds as a writer on Christian's mother on the other hand, and one is left wondering what her Disney CDM is one that actually work in playing the news of connection God, or one hand wonders what it is aside from some of exceedingly genius sex Big Daddy the government granted big budget filmmaker following that stimulation they would get from the country, accepting hoping maybe that some of them on the country held for Peter Jackson's might up film. One cannot help but wonder if Adamson would have ended up as a director of $180 million budget to film like this had he had a Kia passport, and had Peter Jackson not been there before him. After all, Adamson was an animations actor who had never worked with a live-action actor before sleeping on to recite out the line The Wish Anya. Adamson was one of the co-director in Shrek and For All Engine Games, to be regarded as a new market, and for a mainstream filmmaker this touch-based marketing strategies make one wonder about a fair application that embarrasses these movies. There does seem something oddly in allowing one's fare to be exporting by secular campaigners whose only desire towards all a movie ticket and Benny is something hypocrisy have been top and massive child runs a party. Williamson and Narn discovered they were part of pro-prophecy to feed an eye from the clutches of the white whiz. I remember going to be sent to see The Lion of the W and Wardrobe, but can't quite believe that was 15 years ago. I grew up reading the Chronicles of Narnia and really enjoy the film's adaptations. The Lion, the Wish and the Wardrobe is one of the most faithful blog book to film adaptations I have seen, especially for a children's series where so often what ends up on a screen is completely different to words on the page. Perhaps it helped the Narnia books are certified classic and are known across the generation, or it's just more pro to be the care and heart that was put into the film by everyone involved. There are some moments that you don't give your attention as much as the other. Buddha Wish is a story of hope, perseverance and a good trampling over evil is universal, a story and one that told very well from a reproduction and set design to the performances. The four young leads are all wonderful and they do feel like real sibling. George Henley as Lucy is especially brilliant, as it made her that she encountered Narnia for the first film, and her bunch and delight is infectious for me. Edwin, he always been the most interesting as the Penman sibling. His idealists of his older brother, and he can be mean, but over the course of film matures as he sees the consequences of his actions and strive to help other and to do good. Scandals and then good job at showing her now how spiteful Edmund can be, but also how sympathetic and remorseful Isaton is. The white whiz she is financing of the Salankin age from being seemingly a kind and caring to wishes in a second in order to get what she want. She's a for a presence even when she is not on screen, and it's clear to see why the creature of Narnia fear her so. Half the fun of the Lion the King the Wardrobe is carrying the well-known voices come from a variety of Hagery Ravenson and the joyous Mr. and Mrs. Flavor is a delight. The special effect and makeup and costume that bring the creatures of Narnia to life are fantastic and still hold up 15 years later. One has to wonder how the filmmaker's hair made pretty low and Theta looks and acts like a lion while still being able to emote, and Low King of 2010 just don't emote at all. The Linney and the Wish and Wardrobe is a film that is still full of magic. The clear intention and to put on everything from the costume and special effect to the score and the story means that it looks just as good, is just as enjoyable all these years later. Who has not he of the magical award beyond the wardrobe? It has to be one of the most well-known fantasy awarded to be displayed in the literature and on screen. The lamppost which stand in the boundary, the unusual creatures that walk the forest, the trees who listen. Narnia is a wonderfully creative land to become lost into it. Welcome to Narnia. This is the beginning of this magical award. This is the introduction of Theoline the Witch and the Wardrobe. Theoline the Witch and the Wardrobe is a setting during World War II, when your children's are advocated from London to the countryside for children's better. So in a game of hide and seek accidentally discover a word inside the wardrobe, embarking on a new journey. Wish Narnia. The children learn of a prophecy that evil will and when two sons of Adam and two daughters of defeated witch area known to be the children's this force is aboard with them. This world is so aesthetically brought you to life. The children are great in their role. In my eyes, these four actors will forever be the parents of children. They are notofatic all the time because there are some that are not great. Nevertheless, for a 2005 film, they are pretty good a majority of the time. Narnia is all superbly brought to life. I truly love this film. Narnia is such a magical world to escape into. It's an exceptional family film, enjoyable for all. By Thea and Juaries, filled with so much a world. It has everything you could possibly need. Lots of adventures of a fantasy world to adore. Even a glory to intrigue your user straight away. There is even a bit of a fiction with an epic figure scene to book in every artistic. Yes. Levy's classic of children's fantasy literature, to which seeks installment of steeply declining interest and power were added, has now been brought to the screen by Andrew Adamson of Shrek film. The result is a dream. It is gorgeous to look at, is superbly cast, widely directed, and funny and exciting patterns. It unfolds a slim book into various visual experiences that is bold and specular and sweeping while retaining its humana intimacies. I can't see how it could be done better. Perhaps Mel Gibson's would have treated Alan to be very well for 30 minutes before the end, but Adamson handled it with the finest. There will be many adult like me who, after loving the book as child, went through a long post-adolescent phase of the history, repented it after the Christian humanist parable was explained. For me it is the face that this movie has definitely brought to the end. Adamson bring out his story's romantic gallantry and his wonderful genius approach to childhood, for all the seriousness and black association of England where Christ not. The film has a lightness of Dutch simply by having the human being as character. The line in the wardrobe is a friend from Tolkien and his heavy-footed mid, and naturally there is a connection, and Adamson sensibly builds on Peterson's technical achievement in staging a narrative. What the director has done and bring you to closer to playful gravity of Levy Carroll, and also the escape of the young quartet in a Villain adventure series. Us all of the world know this is a story of four middle-class children in the Second World War whose father is fighting the evil of Nazism. The area evacuated from Franklin in London to a country house which is increased to the size of a gigantic mansion presided over by an oppressantly but actually very decent and bold old boy. The youngest of the children's a Lucia-scene thriller of a performance from newcomer George Henley plays in a hide-and-seek with the various siblings and leaves into the wardrobe, pushing through a dense mass of force and becoming a fire. She trembles out into a snowy forest in the land of Narnia, and holy a snowflake civil a glass deli glow. Thea places an undead spell of the evil white race who was caused to remain forever. Winter without the Christmas until allowed by the for Savior children under the command of the lone Alan, a Redeemer figure voiced by Lamb, and with the help of Friendly Braver spoken by Donna French and Raisin, and a draw till Winter plays a YW, and it is her finest lover. She has always been as much icon as actor. a kind of leaving brightening installation and therefore difficult to cast especially in a modern setting, but here a status quo hunter and that our worldly presents are stumbling right. Swinton has a particularly good opening scene in which he was into betraying his friends with an indicious addictive dollop of a Turkish delight. Keynes is very persuasive as a whirly weak at a figure traditionally glossed as there is a something more irrecognizable and English about the Edmund filler letter which is so snick a capture from Mr. James that his fellow a captive danjo in a for sweetest that line reminded me not entirely ironically of Vincent Smith and Islam in Overwell's 1984 and how weakness and rashness can be found beneath the surface of English. The final sacrifice of Alen is conveyed with absolute seriousness yet never feels preachy. The line "The wish and the wardrobe" is a miraculously complete digestible epic in herself, and I wonder if annual episode of the exceeding sequelars in which life spokes himself into an ever-narrowing theological corner might be read heavy fatter, especially also children will presumably need to be recast. This is more than good enough to be going on with. There is no need for annoying to get into a PG of about his Allegory where this movie is being the fun. Adamson provides nothing to the scene of the humor Graham Greene said he needed in order to believe although you don't need to believe in a fairy tale to find it enchanting. Axel Levi's who wrote in Arena's books and Junior Tolkien who wrote in Trilogy where friends were taught at Oxford at the same time where pipe smoker drank in the same pub took Christianity seriously but Elsa talking to Ken's universe the affection was not returned well no wonder when you are created your own universe how do you feel when in the world of poem by King listen there is a hell of a good universe next door Axel Lewis who wrote Narnia book and Tradolkinori Ring Trilogy where friends who taught at Oxford at the same time John where pipe smokers drank his the same puba seriously but Aldo Levy's love talking at the universe the affection was noted returned well no wonder when you created your own universe how did you feel when in the world of poem being so listen there is a Hal Tolkien's universe he was an unsatisfied Middle-earth but Leva was next door in the opening scene Theoloin was with W and the wardrobe Todd brothers and two sister from the Piley family are evacuated from London and sent to live in the West Country house where they will be saved from the Nisa playing hide and seek. Lucy, the youngest ventures into a wardrobe that opens directly onto a snowy landscape and there before long Dra is explaining to her that he's a fun. There are more logical cases in Narnia but most Saudi-speaking laws go humana like the white wiz. If she's a human an animal who would be right at a home in a zoo if indeed they are animals. The kids are from a tradition which requires diabetes children's be polite and well-spoken, no doubt because levies prefer them to What I say remarkable is that this bookish bachelor who did not marry until he was nearly 6. He would create 4 children so filled with life and blood. There is a charm of Narnia stories. They contain a magic and make but their mysterious area resolved not by the kind of rabbit that pull out of his head but by the determinations and resolve of the parents, who have a good deal of help to be sure from Islam to learn for those who read in the Law's book as a kiss parable as Filey the role of kiss because he's resurrected from the dead. I don't know if that makes White Wish into Saturn Buddha till plays a role as if she has no role by possibility the adventure that Lassia has in Narnia at first by her Savannah with her pattern and finally with the older pattern and so are the sort of things that might happen in any British forest always assuming Fonsland and witches can be found here as I'm sure they working only toward the end of the swim to do special effect ramped into the specular hexagons that might have caused Lace to have snapped his P5s to mid is the who have was kept Narnia for cold for a century. No doubt because he is a descendant from the Eden land the lady under the rules supposed to deliver Lucy to wish the fort with but Francia are not heavy hitter and he takes mercy. Lucy returned to the country house and he pops out of the wardrobe. When no time at all has passed out, no one will believe her story. Admin follows here into the wardrobe. That evening, Anna Through the Wardrobe in Narnia. Thea made the first of the movie's DJ genetic character Mr. and Mrs. the Beaver and a Don French who invite him into their home, which is lightly cozy for being a maid of logistic. The Beavers explaining a Aryan situation to them just before an attack by the Rise Force, whose ripping a fan reached hunger through Bino has gone off on his own and gotten himself taken hostage, and the Beaver hold out hope that perhaps the legendary Alama Weiss by him can save him. This involves Jason trying for Edmund's sign much as he is dead forever. Alan's eventual resurrection leads into an apocalyptic climax that may be inspired by a revelation. These events, fatal as Thea's sound, take place on a more human or at least more earthly scale than those in A Lord of Rings. The personalities and a character trait of the children have something to do with the outcome, which is not being decided by wizards on a real level of reality but will be dug out right here in Narnia. That the battle or something to load a body first of fair is likely alternating in Ninja Isa as horrible as a transfer the first of second. The film has been directed by Andrew Adamson, who directed both of the Shrek movies, and Isa supervised the special effect on the Bob of Joel. Sass Levi's famously said he never wanted Narnia books to be Thea film because he feared the animal would turn into the binary or nightmare. He said that in 1959, when he might have been thinking of a man wearing a loin sword or puppet, the effect in this movie are so skillful and that the animals look about as real as any of their character, and these animal Levy explain the secret as speaks in a natural organic manner, which mean mapping the moment of his face onto the whole of the animal just as out. Alan is neither as frankly animated as a Loina King or as real as a Jada and Jama. How in between as if an animal were inhabited by an archive ship. This film occupies an interesting space between traditional family entertainment and the newer, more action-driven style of family movies. It can be stormy, frightening, and intense. Yet it is also wonderfully confident in its ability to entertain without constantly forcing the audience to enjoy itself. Unfortunately, toward the end, the film begins to push some scenes toward the edge of a PG rating. Like the Harry Potter series, the Narnia stories had the potential to become a major fantasy franchise. However, the Chronicles of Narnia arrived at a challenging moment, following Peter Jackson's spectacular and imaginative adaptation of the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Those films had set an extremely high standard for fantasy movies, especially during the same period when New Zealand's filmmaking industry was dominating the pre-Christmas box office from 2001 to 2003. Expectations for Narnia were therefore nothing less than spectacular. Unfortunately, the film does not always live up to those expectations, although it remains fairly faithful to C.S. Lewis's source material. The original story itself has sometimes been criticized for lacking depth compared with its imaginative world-building. The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe feels like a somewhat straightforward adaptation of Lewis's childhood fantasy, and even Tilda Swinton's memorable performance as the White Witch cannot completely overcome the film's occasional flatness. That weakness becomes even more noticeable because fans, both young and old, already know that the first book in the series has a special place in the hearts of readers. While The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe is certainly a competent piece of filmmaking, it is equally clear that it does not always reach the level of greatness that many expected. Still, the film had plenty going for it, with children, families, and longtime Narnia fans eagerly awaiting its release. The movie was expected to have a strong opening when it arrived in the UK and the US on December 9. Fans of the books may especially appreciate characters such as Edmund, one of the younger heroes, whose weakness for enchanted Turkish delight plays an important role in the story. Much of the series' appeal comes from its author, C.S. Lewis, whose Christian beliefs deeply influenced the Narnia books. Lewis converted to Christianity and later developed the series throughout the 1940s, filling its fantasy world with religious symbolism and themes. Because of this, Narnia was always likely to attract a particularly passionate audience among Christian readers and religious families in both the United States and the United Kingdom. Ultimately, The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe is an entertaining and visually impressive family fantasy, but it does not completely capture the extraordinary sense of wonder that audiences had come to expect from the genre.